I ran out of the room, I got on the phone, I called my mother and my grandmother. I said, listen, I said, after this season, our lives are about to change forever. And little did I know our lives were really about to change.
And we went over the ground not once but twice. Nothing underneath it alarmed us. So I took my backpack, about 125 pounds, off my shoulder, and I go to set it on the ground. When the bag hits the ground though, you see underneath it was a bomb.
The landlord has a mortgage. The mortgage is attached to the property. Because of that, the bank has the right to foreclose. And so, ma'am, the property is gonna go to foreclosure.
So Scott, in case you don't recall, you're in a bad car accident. You've broken your neck and have a very serious spinal cord injury that has left you paralyzed from your chest down. Diagnosed, you're quadriplegic. And it wasn't long thereafter I was being told I'd be confined to this chair for the rest of my life.
I still remember the day I was in the film room watching film, and I was watching the California Bears, and my defensive backs coach, Larry Slade, came in the room. He said, Inky Johnson, I got some good news for you. And I dropped the clicker, and I said, Coach, what is it? He said, son, you're a projected top 30 draft pick. He said, all you have to do is play these next 10 football games. You're an automatic multimillionaire. I ran out of the room. I got on the phone. I called my mother and my grandmother. I said, listen, I said, after this season, our lives are about to change forever. And little did I know our lives were really about to change. The first game we come out, play against California Bears. I get an interception. We shut them down. We get the victory. Second game, we're playing against Air Force. It gets late in the game, found ourselves in a dogfight. And I approach the tackle like I approach any other tackle. And the way I'm approaching it, either I'm gonna knock you out or you're gonna knock me out. I'm 165 pounds. I can't play with anybody. But at the point of contact, when I hit this guy, something different happened that had never happened to me before in my life. I hit him, and it seemed as if every breath in my body left. My body went completely limp. I fell to the ground. I blacked out. I looked at the doctor because I couldn't feel my right arm. They had poked me with all type of needles. Inky, can you feel this? Can you feel? I couldn't feel a thing. They took me back. They ran the CAT scans, and they rolled me back into my room, and I'll never forget it. All in about a 15-second time frame, I was lying there in my bed. My father, he went to take a step in, and he looked at me, and he said, son, I can't do it. And he walked out. My mother, she came in. She was running. She kissed me on my forehead. She said a prayer. She said, Ink, everything is going to be okay. And she ran out. And as soon as my mother stepped outside of the room, the doctor rushed in from the opposite side, and he said, hey, get in here. We got to rush this guy back to emergency surgery. He's about to die. I said, what? I said, my mom just told me everything was going to be okay. He said, son, what happened? You have busted up subclavian artery in your chest. You're bleeding internally. Have to rush you back and take the main vein out of your left leg and plug it into your chest in order to save your life. And when I woke up from recovery, the same doctor was standing over me. He said, Inky, I have some good news and some bad news for you. I said, you got some bad news for me? After telling him I was about to die, I'm still alive. How bad can it get? I'm still here. He said, the good news is, son, we saved your life. I said, thank you, sir. He said, the bad news is you have nerve damage in your right shoulder. You probably can never play the game of football again in your life. I said, Doc, no disrespect, man, but I'm 8 games away. I've been working for this ever since I was 7 years old, Doc. There's no way. God, not now, God. Like, let me make it to the NFL so I can help my family first. Like, we miss Mills. I said, there's no way. I never cheated. I never cheated myself. I gave everything I had to it, and I respected it. I never cheated. There's no way that my career can be over. I said, send me up to the Mayo Clinic. And after several visits, I'll never forget, this is when reality set in. It was me, my mother, my father in the room, and the doctors came in. They said, Inky Johnson, here's the deal. They said, son, we hate to tell you, but your arm, it would never be the same again. Your hand, it would never be the same again. Son, you can never play the game of football again. They said, son, here are your surgery options. We could take a muscle out of the back of your left leg, plug it into your right arm, but there's a possibility that you'll be left with a weak left leg and a weak right arm the rest of your life. Or we could take a nerve out of your left arm, reroute it up to your chest, down into your right arm, but there's a possibility that you'll be left with 2 weak arms the rest of your life. Or we could take a nerve out of your left rib, reroute it up to your chest, down into your right arm, but there's a possibility that you'll be left with a breathing problem and a weak right arm the rest of your life. By the way, tell us what you want to do in the morning. And the next morning I walked into the doctor's office. They said, son, what option did you choose? I said, no disrespect to you, doc. I'm not choosing an option. My situation is out of your hands. I said, no disrespect to you, doc. Cut me where you got to cut me. I said, I know I will come out of this situation okay. As I stand right here on this stage before you today, they cut me 6 times down my left thigh. They cut me 2 times across my right rib. They cut me 2 times across my right pec. They cut me 1 time across the left side of my neck, 1 time across the right side of my neck. They cut me from the bottom of my armpit all the way down to the bottom of my hand. And after they got through cutting on me, they said, son, you're gonna be in this hospital for the next 40 days. I walked out of the hospital on the 3rd day. They said, you broke a record. How did you do it? And I said, first and foremost, the thing I want y'all to understand, I will never let a circumstance or a situation define my life. But most importantly, you know what I had invested? I had sweat equity. I had been working my whole life. And what I didn't understand, by being determined to chase something, by being committed to it, and what commitment is staying true to what you said you were going to do long after the mood that you have set it in has left. You see, people think commitment is saying, yes, I'll do it on the days when it feels good. But I have been committed to everything that I ever started in my life, and I never stopped and I never quit it. And so by being committed to everything that I started, I finished it. It built a certain type of spirit. It built a certain type of mentality. It built a certain type of individual. And so now I couldn't quit even if I wanted to. I couldn't lay in the bed even if I wanted to. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. I had too much sweat equity in my life and everything that I was doing. I understood the process is more important than the product. It wasn't about the outcome for me. Whether I made it to the NFL or not, that was inconsequential in God's plan for my life. But I was going to fall in love with that process because I understood by falling in love with that process, it was going to turn me into a machine. A lot of people need a little extra money to get motivated. A lot of people need, whatever the case may be, a little bonus to get motivated. I don't need anything but breath in my body and life. And every day I wake up, I understand I got 2 children depending on me. I understand I got a wife depending on me. I understand I got a world that needs me. The reason I go at life with the passion and the zeal that I go at it with is because I understand every day of my life is somebody in the world that is dependent on me. It may not be you, and if it's just about you, you're in trouble because I'm telling you, you're gonna hit something in life that's a lot tougher than you, and it's gonna test your will and it's gonna test your heart. And if it's just about you and if it's just about the product, it will crush you. Every day I get up, I understand it's somebody in the free world that's looking at me to see if I'm gonna keep going, and so I can't quit. And so I went back to school the next week after they had just saved my life. I was back in class. I had to learn how to write all over again. Had to learn how to walk all over again. Had to learn how to tie my shoe all over again. Had to learn how to bathe all over again. Had to learn how to live life all over again. Never one time did I say, let me go home, I need a break. You see, the thing we have to understand about everything that we're a part of, first and foremost, it's a blessing by God. And when it's a blessing, you can't help but to give everything you got to it. My life got saved. I got spared my life. I almost died. The doctor came to me on the field. He was on one knee and he grabbed my wrist and he said, son, you don't have a pulse. I don't even know how you're still living. The thing about it, my wound, like you can see this. You can see my arm. My wound is visible. But it's a lot of people in this room that are wounded and you can't see it. And it's internal. And so the opportunities that we pass up to be a blessing to other people, we can save their life with just one encounter. In my last doctor visit, they came to me and they said, sorry, Inky Johnson, you will never be able to use this arm or hand again in your life. I said, no disrespect to you, doc, but I will use this arm and this hand every day for the rest of my life by the way that I live my life. Every day, I'm going to impact someone's life. Every day, I'm going to empower someone. Every day, I'm going to inspire someone. Every day, I'm going to encourage someone.
I'm gonna tell you a secret about myself you didn't know before today. Here it is. I don't wash my hands after I use the bathroom. Yeah. I know, I wash my hand. Are you kidding me right meow? I know. You see, I tell jokes to disarm the situation. Oh, knee slapper. For our first deployment, I went overseas for 15 months. While I'm over there, I meet my medic, who's a good friend of mine, and we're hanging out. Well, this MySpace friend request pops up, and there's the picture right there. I don't know that lady, so I go and hit decline, because I'm like, that's a dating site, no way. When you know it, same last name as my medic. He didn't tell me about no cousin that he had looks like that. He didn't have a cousin that looks like that. That's his little sister. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And she thinks I'm pretty cute. Can't blame her. So I hit accept and start chit-chatting with this girl online, right? And I don't know much about her. I'm 20, she's 18. But we decide we should hang out. Never met her before. So what are you supposed to do? I fly into Dallas to pick her up. Well, the next morning we're saying our goodbyes. In between her sobs, she says, I love you, you know? And I'm not an idiot, you know, I'm not a Marine. I'm like, hey, you know, hey, I love you too. We got married. Then we got an apartment at Fort Bragg, got a dog. I had another deployment, went overseas for a year this time. Came back, 4 months later, my wife and I found out we were gonna have a baby, which is exciting, you know, because a lot of guys came back 4 months later, their wife had a baby, and they're like, yeah, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's a miracle, and you're like, it's not. It's not. Like, he's just premature. That baby's 12 pounds, you know what I mean? So, I'm just kidding. My wife and I had the baby. So my wife knew there was a brotherhood, there was a calling. So I'm like, I have to go overseas. Guys that come across this great nation, that believe in me, serve under me, and I decided that I'm gonna go. Well, a month and a half in, we get a phone call from the village elder. He says, hey, we got some roadside bombs in the village, you guys can check them out. So we do that. We go out, and we went over the ground not once, but twice. Nothing underneath it alarmed us. So I took my backpack, about 125 pounds, off my shoulder, and I go set it on the ground. When the bag hits the ground, though, you see underneath it was a bomb. And when the bomb went off, it took my right arm, right leg off automatically. I get thrown left side of my face, right? I roll over my back. I see the aftermath of what's happening. And in my head, I keep replaying the movie Saving Private Ryan. When the medic gets shot in the stomach, he yells for his mom in fear. And then he ultimately dies. And I keep telling myself, do not freak out. So in my head, I'm telling the medic, hey, it's fine, whatever happens, happens. Tourniquets got on me, get me on a helicopter to the hospital. And as they're wheeling me through the hospital, I'm still conscious and coherent and awake. And the nurses, I keep trying to sit up, and they keep pushing me down. I say, quit touching me, I'm fine, leave me alone. And they say, look, Sergeant Mills, I don't know how you're still awake right now, but you need to go to sleep. And they knock me out. Last thing I say to the nurse when I look over at her is my little girl, am I ever gonna see her again? Because she was 6 months old at the time. So they knocked me out, pushed me in 14 hours of surgery, 9 doctors and 7 nurses work on me. 2 nurses for 9 hours pump air in and out of my lungs. And on April 14th of 2012, they woke me up for the very first time. When I came to, only person in the room was my brother-in-law. And I looked over at Josh and I said, am I paralyzed? He said, no. I looked at him again, I said, Josh, I can't feel my fingers and toes, so tell me the truth. Am I paralyzed? He said, man, you're not paralyzed, but you ain't got him anymore. Immediately in my head, I was embarrassed, ashamed that I got hit. How can I be a father and a husband? And the biggest thing that went through my head was, why didn't I just die? How is this better than me just dying? I didn't want to talk to my parents. I did not want to talk to my wife and face reality. Finally, Josh says, look, man, I can only imagine what you're going through, but you got to call your wife and your parents. So I called my wife. She answered, I said, hey, what's up? I'm fine, love you, bye. Because I don't want to have this conversation. I called my mom and dad. Before I could get the phone hung up, my mom yells, hey, Travis, happy birthday, by the way, because that day was my 25th birthday. 3 days later, I arrived at Walter Reed. My wife came up to me as they're pushing me in on the stretcher. And I look over and I say, hey, Kels, you don't got to do this. Whatever we have in the account's yours. The house is yours. And financially, whatever I can do to help you and Chloe for the rest of your life, I will do that. But take everything we have and go. This isn't what I would choose for you. And she said, I've thought about that. But handicap parking, I want it. I want it. Yeah. So she stayed. She stayed. Now, she said, that's not how this works. We're going to get through this together. And when my daughter's in there looking at me, I think she's going to think her dad's a monster. I mean, look at me. And all of a sudden, she starts to laugh and giggle. And it dawns on me, I look like every single toy she's ever been given. Short arms, short legs, fuzzy chest. I'm a teddy bear. But for these two, I'm going to get better. So I started my recovery. The first thing I had to do was start setting some real goals. So the first thing I want to do is be able to feed myself. After that, you know what? It was time for me to start walking again. I knew it could be done. I had to get going and start walking. So 7 weeks and 4 days, just shy of 2 months, I took my very first steps at Walter Reed. It was very painful. When I got my legs on, they said you might walk 1 lap at the Military Advanced Training Center, which is about as big as a gymnasium. So I walked 3 laps that day just to prove I could. So I also had a goal. On my birthday, when I woke up, I was able to drive 6.5 hours home to North Carolina so I could see my men. Me hugging Daniel Bateson, the medic that actually saved my life. I never dwell on the past. I used to always wonder, what if I didn't step there? How can I go back in time? I'd close my eyes and I'd wish and I'd pray for it not to happen, but it's not the case. So instead of dwelling on the past, I reminisce the past. I had 25 great years. I've had 6 wonderful years since. You can't always control your situation. But every day, I wake up thankful that I'm still here with my family. I still take my daughter gymnastics. I still enjoy time with my wife. I'm still able to do things. I realize life's going to be forever changing. There's always going to be something that you have planned out, and all of a sudden you have to have a new direction. Embrace that change, and no matter what's scary or seems impossible, always push through, because it's going to get better if you make it that way.
Out of nowhere, she gets a knock on the door. When my mom opens up the door, the gentleman on the other end, he hands my mom these legal documents. She starts flipping through the pages, and then she realizes that the property is going to foreclosure. She picks up the phone and she calls them up. And she goes, "Hello? Oui, this is Marie. Yes, I received the papers in the mail. It says that the property is going to foreclosure. But I don't understand. Every month I pay the landlord on time. Every month I pay him. I don't understand why the property is going to foreclosure." The lady on the line could tell that my mom sincerely did not understand what was going on. She said, "Oh, Marie, even though you've been paying the landlord money every single month on time, the landlord has a mortgage. The mortgage is attached to the property. Because of that, the bank has the right to foreclose. And so, ma'am, the property is gonna go to foreclosure." And so my mom asked her, "Do you think that maybe I can go to the foreclosure sale? Whoever buys the property, I will be a good tenant for them. I will stay in the property. I will pay them the rent. Please, do you think that they will let me stay?" And you know what the lady told my mom? She said, "Ma'am, it's not even worth you showing up. Whoever buys that property is not gonna wanna keep your little restaurant in there." So my mom was devastated. She's like, "This is how I take care of my 2 boys. I got all my life savings into this property." And so about 2 weeks later, my mom says, "You know what? I know that sometimes you don't just have to listen to what people tell you." My mom shows up to the foreclosure sale. She's expecting a room full of investors, but to her surprise, there's only 2 people there: the auctioneer and the representative from the bank. Now, before my mom could realize what's going on, the auctioneer steps up to the podium. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the bidding process on 540 West Atlantic Avenue. If you're here to bid on the property, please raise your hand." And so naturally, the representative from the bank is standing over here. She raises her hand. My mom, who had no intentions on bidding on the property, doesn't even know how this thing works. My mom decided to take an act of faith and raise her hand. The auctioneer said, "Very well, we're gonna start the bidding process at 30,000. Can I get a 30,000? The representative from the bank is standing here, says 30,000. My mom's still in the game, no money, 35,000. It gets over here to the bankers, that banker says 36,000. This goes on and on. Now they're in the 40s, now they're in the 50s, now they're in the 60s, now they're in the 70s. It gets over here to the banker, that banker says 76,000. Now, my mom's like, "I might as well have some fun. I don't have any money anyway. We must be playing with some Monopoly money." And so my mom, attitude and all, my mom goes, 76,500. The representative from the bank is standing here with a clip pad. She picks up the clip pad and she says nothing. The auctioneer's got to keep the process going. He goes 76,500 going once, no answer. He goes 76,500 going twice, no answer. He goes 76,500 sold to who? My mom, the woman who had no intentions on bidding on the property. And so my mom is excited she won the bid. And then she's like, "Wait a second, I actually have to have the money." And so they told her, "You got 30 days to come up with the money." And so my mom would go home. She'd pull out a notepad and she'd start writing down the names of all of her friends and all of her family members, one by one. And she would call them up and tell them the story. Some would lend her 1,000, some would lend her 2,000, some would lend her 3,000, some lend her 4,000, some lend her 5,000. And she's 3 days away and she's still $30,000 short. And my mom's thinking, maybe this isn't meant to be. And then her telephone rings. And it's her friend Yvonne's. And when her friend calls her up, my mom says, He voiced, no, it's too late. I have 3 days. I still need $30,000. Evo said, no, Marie, listen. I know you've been calling us, but me and my husband, we've been saving up money to buy a house. We heard you call us. We heard the voicemails. Right now, we've saved up $30,000. We prayed about it. We talked about it. And we want to lend you the $30,000. So my mom would go and get the money from Evo's and all of her friends and all of her family members. And she would drive over to the bank and get a cashier's check. She would get back in the car, drive up to Palm Beach, look at that big, thick cashier's window with the little hole at the bottom. My mom would proudly take that cashier's check and slide it through the little hole. And that day, my mom went from being the tenant to being the landlord, all because she was willing to show up. And so here's what I say to you. There are gonna be times that you're gonna be wondering, why should I keep showing up and working my business? Why should I keep picking up the phones and making the phone calls? Why should I keep fighting for my goals and fighting for my dreams? And what I want to remind you is that you gotta show up for your life regardless of the circumstances. You gotta show up in spite of the naysayers. You gotta show up in spite of the conversation going on in your mind. You gotta show up for your life. Because if you don't, nobody else will.
My friend Ed was driving way too fast. At the time, we didn't realize he may have had too much to drink. Ed lost control of the wheel of that car, and he crashed into a mound of sand, sending that car hurling into the air before tumbling back to earth. One of the first times that I came to, that's when one of my doctors said this. He said, Scott, in case you don't recall, you're in a bad car accident. You've broken your neck and have a very serious spinal cord injury that has left you paralyzed from your chest down. Diagnosed quadriplegic. It wasn't long thereafter I was being told I'd be confined to this chair for the rest of my life. 30 days into this experience, laying there, I started getting some movement back in both of my wrists. In the back of my mind, I started thinking to myself that no matter how difficult life would be going forward, that everything would be okay. When I first started pushing a wheelchair, that's when one of my doctors, though, pulled me over. And he goes, Scott, look, we know you're getting some movement back in your arms. Not uncommon, but I think now more than ever, you need to understand the seriousness of your spinal cord injury and come to realize that the movement that you're getting back in your arms is as good as it's gonna get. I don't know if that is exactly what he said, but what I heard was, you might as well go ahead right now and give up hope. Give up hope on the idea you'll ever come out of this chair. You know what the problem was? I bought into his words. My vision darkened. And to make matters a little more difficult for my parents, they were 2,000 miles away, and I literally stopped taking their phone calls. 4 days later, Dad got me on the phone, and he demanded to know what was wrong. So I made an executive decision to tell him. And all he said was this: I was out there 2 weeks ago for your birthday. Your attitude was off the charts. Remember how I reached down, put my arms under your arms, and hoisted you into the upright position? Do you recall what that felt like? Of course I do. Will you do me a favor? Will you go back and recapture that mindset and re-own it again? In the meantime, don't be upset with me. I'm gonna have words with that doctor. And then come the next morning, when I woke up, I could not believe my eyes. Standing at that doorway, looking back at me, was my dad. Letting me know, in a sense, everything would be okay. And if I learned anything from Dad, that no matter how difficult life is for you, in that moment, you can always change your way of thinking. And that's when I made the profound decision that I was willing to fail, but I was unwilling to quit. while knowing that nothing worth achieving ever comes too easy. But to succeed, that takes grit. But what is grit? Grit, my friends, is your passion to persevere. Grit is what keeps you off the sidelines and back in the game of life. Well, there's something I learned in my life so many years ago, and I know it to be the truth. Don't ever let someone else's beliefs paralyze you from achieving those things you believe in your mind that you just might be able to achieve. If you are looking to thrive, to beat the odds, and achieve extraordinary results in your own lives, don't give up too soon.
That doesn't just mean basketball. That means anything in life. That means writing. That means being an entrepreneur. That means having the confidence to go for it,